Welcome to The Grounded Leader, Ayurvedic wellness for leaders who want to succeed from a place of balance. A podcast where ancient practices meet ambitious goals to help you operate with strength, clarity, and grounded intention. I'm your host, Shweta Vikram, an Ayurvedic doctor, trauma informed yoga teacher, award winning author, mindfulness coach, corporate wellness speaker, adjunct professor, and a lifelong student of what it really means to lead with clarity, purpose, and peace. Each week, we'll explore holistic wellness, how to excel in authentic leadership, and live with balance and purpose. Let's dive in. On today's episode, regaining your equilibrium. Should shouldering the demands of your life come at a cost? We are talking about a group of people who rarely get enough credit for the weight they carry, leaders in the sandwich generation. And yet, they continue to perform as expected at the optimal level. To what end? If that's you, you know exactly what I mean. You're running a team or business, showing up for your kids, managing the emotional and logistical roller coaster of elder care, and keeping family life afloat. On paper, you're a powerhouse, but inside, you might feel stretched so thin you're about to break. Welcome to this episode. I am so excited and thrilled to introduce you to Aditi Davray, who's a consultant to nonprofit, philanthropic, and private sector organizations working with a wide range of issues and areas in strategic advancement. Aditi is currently pursuing her doctorate of education in educational leadership and policy at NYU. She also holds a master's in public administration, nonprofit management, and policy from New York University's Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service. More about Aditi and her remarkable work and career in the show notes below. But I can tell you that she is the perfect guest expert for today's episode. Aditi and I intend to have an honest conversation about what this nonstop caregiving and leading cycle does to our wellness, how it quietly steals our energy, leaves our dreams on pause, and chips away at that sense of fulfillment we once imagined for our lives and careers. Today's episode is for every person who feels like they're holding up for the world for everyone else while wondering when it will be their turn to breathe. Welcome, Aditi.
Thank you, Shweta, for having me. This is so exciting to be here with you, and I'm excited to share my thoughts and ideas with you all.
Thank you for being here. And you are, and I'm not just saying it's for the sake of saying it, you know this well. You are really the perfect person to be speaking to this topic because I know you are navigating multi-generational home in different times and spaces. You're also doing a doctorate. Woohoo, that's incredible. And you have all this career experience, and I am sure you felt that burnout. I was a caregiver for a couple of years, and I just remember while it was such a privilege to be able to take care of the people you love, there's also something called reality check where you're like, I'm also drained. And how do you find that space to breathe, to be you? So when you think of women in the sandwich generation, and to anyone who's wondering what this sandwich generation is, it's people in the middle who have elder care responsibilities and they also taking care of their children. So literally sandwich, right? What are the pressures do you see that go often unseen?
Yeah, thank you for such a great question and for setting the stage for this conversation today, Shweta. Um, as I was thinking about our conversation, I definitely I'll be referring to some of my notes because I have so much to share. Um, when I think of the sandwich generation, and you'll hear me say this again and again, I definitely don't want this to be a woe is me
Mhm.
type of conversation because it's not that. It's about recognizing and calling out what we all might be experiencing. So the first thing I thought about is like, what is my identity?
Hmm.
I'd like to explore that a bit and set your audience straight on, what perspective I'm coming from.
Okay.
My perspective is mid to senior career leader who has mentored colleagues, been mentored, built and led a team, counseled friends, peers, and colleagues from other sectors,
Right.
also my own, have children and have aging and a deceased parent.
Hmm.
So these are all the different identities that make up this person that I am. And I think that's very important to recognize because there may be other people who can identify with some of these characteristics. And in that, um, you know, I would think, well, then how do I go about supporting myself
Hmm.
given all these characteristics? So I think of women who are in the sandwich generation as juggling multiple characteristics. Um, and the pressures that are unseen are the results of some of these characteristics. You're juggling multiple priorities, expectations, demands um, of professional life and maybe even personal life. Um, and you know this the personal professional life, daily life could also be people at work and your community.
Right.
So it's sort of this extended structure of your life. And I mean, I don't want to necessarily say these are the pressures that go unseen, but in juggling these demands, um, I like to recognize this identity because then it helps me um, become more aware of the people that are working with me or around me, or even in some instances on my team for me.
Wow. So it brings in more compassion to your leadership and makes it more wholesome. Is that fair to say?
I would say yes, and I would say my interaction with these human beings is then very unique
Hmm.
in a given situation. And so compassion is part of it, but sort of a deeper, I would say, sort of, culture is such a broad term, but sort of culturally responsive awareness and understanding.
Okay. I really appreciate that. And something for our listeners, Aditi and I wanted to be very, very clear about this conversation. And I loved what she said. It's not woe is me, is not the stance that we're taking. And also, men are in this situation, right? They are also part of but the reason we chose to talk about women today is because it's just when you look at the numbers, the 60% of those in the so-called sandwich generation are women. University of Phoenix in 2025 found out that over half of working mothers in the sandwich generation use their paycheck for caregiving duties. So it's only fair that we bring this to light to have this conversation. And I'm sure our men who are listening, tuning in, they can also relate to a lot of the conversation that we have. So it's not about a gender bias in a conversation, is where I'm getting at. And Aditi, here is the other question that I was wondering about. Why is it that leaders, or women leaders, or male leaders, they hit particularly hard in this stage of life? Is it everything coming together or everything falling apart, depending on, how we look at the glass half full or half empty? Just even when you look at your networks or your colleagues or our ecosystem, I feel like a week doesn't go by where I haven't talked about elder care challenges with a friend or colleague, or childcare, or leadership challenges. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's a great question. And I think, this is not me being ageist. It's more about where you are in the stage of your career in life. It's just the fact that you have probably progressed in your career and then you're interacting with a network of peers who are similarly placed. And that's why I kind of wanted to bring my identity into the mix because certainly doesn't, eliminate male identifying folks or other folks in sort of similar situation. But
Right.
I this is the whole, juggling priorities is very specific to somebody at this stage in their life.
Hmm.
career or personal life. Um, and it's also the amount of responsibilities you've kind of said yes to. So
Explain
it's
that more.
yeah, it's you've made it, and I was thinking about this earlier, is well, okay, we are in the sandwich generation, but choices to be in the sandwich generation. You've had children, you've succeeded in your professional career, and your aging parents are, or your deceased parents, that is life happening to you.
Right.
So circumstantially, you're just there. But I think what's important is what choices you make.
Hmm.
What choices will I make? And I'll speak specifically to me. What choices am I making to prioritize my time, to prioritize myself, to prioritize my truths? Um, and what am I doing to ensure that I feel supported in navigating a variety of these? I don't necessarily want to call them challenges, but some perhaps barriers that I'm experiencing in my life. Um, and they may not always be barriers, they're just circumstantially life choices.
Right. So how does this constantly shifting between, leading or caregiving, holding it all together, being there for your child's school play and, getting ready for the board meeting while making sure an aging parent is taken care of. How does that affect, from in your experience, people's mental, emotional, or physical health?
Yeah, I think the choices we make and the circumstances we're in, they tend to have, number of they result in a number of situations or experiences that are happening to you. I mean, sometimes, leaders experience imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
lack of confidence, lack of self-determination, true mental health issues. And when I say true, it's like diagnosed mental health issues, or otherwise,
Right.
poor physical health, poor physical health as a result of poor nutrition, poor imbalance in how you're caring for yourself. Um, so I think, you all of these things that we're juggling could result in some of this, some of these situations, which makes it ever more challenging to juggle. And that's why I feel like making choices on how you support yourself is important, and how you support your career and your personal life.
I
And
think,
I'll just add to it. And there's one
yes,
example
please.
that came up yesterday, which I was like, oh my God, should I mention this? I have a
Please.
30-year-old, and she said she's getting ready for her sports commitment for the school year. And she said to me, and this is the first year she tried it last sport, and she said to me, if well, will you attend all my games this year? And
Hmm.
so, big confession, I wasn't able to attend all of the games this year, and it certainly created a very tightness in my chest, and so I had to breathe very deeply.
Oh.
And I proceeded to tell her, how well she played as to why I wasn't able to attend. But here is the thing, I think it's a choice we make to be there by 3:30 for all the after school sports happening 4 days a week.
Hmm.
And I, there are moments where I'm not able to make that commitment. I also have a second child playing sports, so sometimes I have to attend his games. So I think and sometimes I'm on work calls. So it's I think it's a matter of communicating with the people that are in your life about these imbalances or balances you or choices you have to make. And for the people who say that you can have it all, I'm sorry to say, but you really can't. But you have to make the choices, and for the people that you really love and care about, you have to talk about them. And it's less so justifying, but more so respecting them enough to share with them as to why you can't make it to something or why you will or and what have you. So
I love that. And I think two words, if I were to paraphrase everything that you just shared, and I think it'll give women, moms, a lot of freedom to breathe and realize, and I think that's why these conversations are important. Like, I'm not alone. I cannot be in 5 million places at one given time or at any given time, right? So the choices that you talk about are actually freeing. Maybe at the start, like a little hurtful, like, oh my God, am I going to be disappointed in my child, my partner, my boss? But like the word communication really comes to mind in that, like, no, you communicate with kindness,
yeah.
right? And I think that's how we also build our ecosystem, because very often we think ecosystem has to be peers, but can
Mm.
also be your kid,
Yeah,
right? And we teaching them when they're really young what ecosystem means.
exactly. That's such a great way to put it, Shweta. Yeah, you're totally right. Um, I think, and even just not that maybe I did profoundly or did not, but setting the example and the tone that, this everybody will experience these choices moving forward in their lives as they grow
Mm.
bigger and older. And this is how you, as a person, should or can communicate. Um, but it also does not, I think the thing that got me most is it doesn't mean that I love her less if I don't attend, but she is young. So I
Absolutely.
think I have to just keep reinforcing that. But it's not isolated to this situation. I think there are other people who have children who might experience similar situations, or there's a niece's graduation, and the niece is like, if I get valedictorian, will you attend? And it's really not about that. It's not, based on performance, right? We have to kind of get out of that mindset.
I love that because I've been in that situation. Not a valid, it was a little niece's ballerina performance. And we were on our way back from Panchkarma. So even stopping to see family is very much against the Ayurvedic rules of like not seeing family is not okay, but like getting rest, minimal conversations, turning inward. That's the whole point of a panchkarma, amongst other things, right? And so we stopped by to see them, and she wanted us to be there for her ballet performance. And try talking to a 5-year-old about panchkarma, and I need to rest. And so this is the next thing I wanted to talk about, like the guilt. I
Mhm.
did what I had to do because it only made sense. Two sick adults wouldn't have been pretty for anyone. And like all the effort that you've made in that self-care, the commitment that you make to take care of you is going to get washed down if you're surrounded by 200 children doing ballerina, which if it wasn't Panchkarma, that would have been the best thing for the soul, right? But like the whole idea, even when you go for Panchkarma, they'll tell you, please don't check email, don't be on the phone. You want your nervous system to reset, and sound is not your friend then. So how do you navigate this? Sometimes I've also had that grief, honestly, of missing a performance. Like, to be loved so dearly by a 5-year-old is also precious. But so I felt that grief, but I also felt that guilt. And on the other hand, there are women who have to compromise on their careers, or they have to leave their personal dreams incomplete because they're part of the sandwich generation. And what do you have to, or do you, I don't want to put you in a situation like Aditi, what do you have to say to them? But it's relatable, right? Like, how do you navigate situations like that? We've all been there, we'll all be in that situation. Someday you choose you, most days you end up choosing other people. And that's what being a woman sometimes means, unfortunately or fortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I did reflect on that because, one thing that you and I had talked about a while ago is this should not be like a a, a situation where we're kind of dumping weight
Right.
on some of these responsibilities, but it's more about, well, what's the call to action here? And that's something I have been actively thinking about, or based on what I have done personally. And so the one thing that has come to mind, and it's taken me a long time to learn this, so I hope it's, and I've heard other people say it, so it's certainly not owning this one. But cultivating supportive friendships, super important, I feel like, and friendships that are meaningful, getting rid of the toxic ones. I'm sorry. I'm taking one from Marie Kondo's page and, getting rid of anything
Deep
that,
cleaning.
yeah, nothing meaningful. Um, and communicating with your ecosystem that you talked about, letting folks that are closest to you, perhaps at work or even in your personal life, and letting them know where you are. With I'm not saying, you announce you're leaving, drastically change your life, but even the fact that you're experiencing certain issues, be it in work or personal life, people that you really look up to guide you. Um, and, investing time in family members that care about you. So these are all things that I have actively done to support myself, in navigating tough situations in my life. Committing to family life at your home, if that's meaningful, carving out time for yourself. I mean, and you talk about that during Punch Karma. You're prioritizing yourself. You're
Right.
prioritizing rest. You're eliminating toxicity. And I don't mean toxicity in the negative sense, just any kind of external engagement.
Absolutely.
And then one thing I've learned from you, Shweta, is getting enough sleep.
Isn't it the best? Everything goes the way it's meant to go eventually if you get your sleep straight in a row, like the sleep hygiene.
Yeah. Super, super important. Took me a long time to learn, but very important.
I'm glad it resonated with you because I learned it the hard way as well.
Yeah.
Sleep is for the wimp, sleep is for the weak. These cliches and memes have impacted each one of us at some stage of life. And I really wish that most people don't have to learn the hard way why sleep is so restorative. And I know a lot of women also feel guilt around rest. They feel guilt around, and so here's my question, Aditi. Like, have you seen this in your experience or in the workplace when women aren't well rested? Does it have a ripple effect in the workplace? I'll give you an example. When I haven't slept well, I'm very emotional.
Mm.
Everything has an emotional undertone, including my cup of coffee, which is not poetic at all. Like, and I can see as an observer, I'm like, this doesn't feel like me. And I get a good night's sleep. It's different, but everything is very emotional. And I'm like, okay, I just pray that, oh my God, today, let it not be the day where I have to deal with 20 meetings because my emotions, more than my pragmatic side, will show up. So, in your experience, have you seen that?
Yeah, I would say that certainly resonates for me, personally. Um, it also, I think we know the scientific reasons why we all need sleep. That's when your body expels the toxins and your body has a chance to reset and all of those things. We all know the science behind this. But I think, yeah, having less sleep, also feel like saying eliminating the alcohol. Um, I just find gives me a sharpened level of focus.
Mm,
I am making decisions in the pragmatic sense. I am making rational choices. Um, and it's giving me a lot more focus. I mean, definitely a bit of caffeine helps, but I don't need the caffeine anymore.
right.
Just to have it.
Which is so
Um,
different.
Energy, the taste, all of those things. But I think you begin to make rational choices, is my experience with getting enough sleep and rest.
Mm.
Um, Rational about it and listening to your body. Yeah.
I love that. And you've been like the way you said that you don't need the caffeine, but you choose to. That's what a rested leader can do, especially one in the sandwich generation. And I say that because making nourishing choices, whether it's in your personal life, what you feed, what you hear, who you talk to, who you share your stories and secrets with, all of that makes a difference in terms of how we show up in the workplace. A person who is grounded and anchored, w- um, the chances of their teammates walking around on eggshells around them is a lot lesser than someone who is almost like an active volcano. You just don't know when they'll explode.
Yeah.
Am saying this, and as I say this, I feel something in my nervous system. Anyone who knows me knows keep referring to the nervous system a little too much, but I feel like everything is connected to the nervous system. So the even the thought of being in a room where, where a person has this explosive personality doesn't feel very safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I agree with you, and I think it's symptomatic, right? So it's
Hmm.
like there may be things going on in the personal life. There may be things going on at work. The chemistry may not be aligned. Um, so I do feel like all of that sort of piles up, and specific to folks in this generation who are juggling these multiple priorities. I think just even thinking about reprioritizing yourself. What is important to me? Um, and again, I keep coming back to this. I sound like a broken record, but making that choice or choosing a plan that's right for you. Um, because I think it's just a long-term investment in your physical and mental health to do that.
So I love what you shared about what an individual, a woman, a leader, or someone from the sandwich generation can do. How can we break the cycles? And what I mean by that is, what are some organizations or some ways in which organizations or communities or families, how can they actually support women in this role? Because, the grief and the guilt is something which is so deeply ingrained in women. And that's a whole other conversation around patriarchy, social conditioning. But I'm just being very real. Like, prioritizing you doesn't come easily, yourself doesn't come easily for a lot of women. So, how can we have this system where others empower and support us?
Yeah.
What can organizations do? Any ideas around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, in my experience, I would say it's very important to know the members that make up your team. And I don't mean surface level, taking time to get to know each and every person. Yes, it takes time, but that's important.
Right.
A large team, get to know the people that work for you, understand how they function, understand um, what inspires them, understand what some of their challenges are. And that's just immediately on the team. So that's that sort of ecosystem. Sort of on the larger level, I think it's called meso. Um, just understanding, if you have an executive director or you have a board chair, just understanding what inspires them and what their barriers are. And similarly, just doing that across the macro, across the larger systems, the community-based systems. Um, and learning to ensure that you're giving them the space that's needed. In a particular role, somebody had once shared their operating manual with me,
Mm,
and this was, and I thought that was great, and I should have. I had never seen one before, and it allowed me special insight. I'm not saying everybody rush out and create operating manuals because it depends on the size of your team, but
right.
that's a great way to understand what some of the challenges, what the inspirations are for that particular team member. And ensuring that um, leaders are being empathetic to one another. These are real life challenges. Um, and having a long-term chronically ill parent or, on their way, ensuring that the team member receives a lot of support, emotional, um, and space to take care of what's needed. Because it's certainly, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, it's just, especially if you have a parent who's ill or has been ill in the long term, it just requires an extra level of energy. Because you are then, depending on what your relationship is as primary caregiver, making decisions for them.
Right.
Um, this is not new, but I shared a while ago, and I know you have as well, Shweta, but I lost a parent about just under 2 years ago. And
So sorry again.
no, same, and I'm sorry for your loss. And, I'm in a much better place to talk about this.
Right.
But so my particular experience comes from there, where traveling across continents over 4 days, returning back to work, at some point I realized that that was not sustainable for my well-being. And so, I was put in a position myself. So I'm owning that choice. I had to make a choice. And I think we all will experience that. So just ensuring that, be it your teams, your leaders, um, have the space and time, but also the resources.
Mm,
How are you, as a company executive, investing in well-being? And it's not just a catchphrase or raison du jour today. What are you doing to ensure that you're actively thinking about, well, how do you define well-being for the organization and the people in it? And then what are the resources that are being committed to it and actively doing that? Um, and no longer just part of the mission statement tucked away somewhere in the filing cabinet. So I would say, the last point is incredibly important. I see a lot of companies saying they're standing behind well-being and mental health, but I would say this is your opportunity. If you are listening to this podcast, think about what you're doing to actively commit to resources, and what is that offering? Does it resonate with your like staff and team or company? And I think that's truly being values aligned and creating shared values. So yeah, so I'll pause there. I've said a lot.
no, that this is so beautiful and so inspiring to hear this because I'm hearing multiple suggestions for people, individuals, companies, and communities because we all benefit. If employees thrive, the company thrives, right? If an individual thrives, the team thrives, the family thrives, the company thrives. So it's all connected. So you've shared with us what companies can do. What has worked for you in terms of prioritizing what self-care looks for you, what well-being looks for you when you are part of this generation that's navigating multiple responsibilities, right? So maybe can you share like this one meaningful step or a few meaningful steps that women can take to put them back on their priority list? I joke about this. I used to always tell my dad that, you're not samosas or brownies. It's not your job to make others happy. But it's, I'm laughing, you're laughing, but it's so it it struck a chord with him. He understood what I meant. I was like, it's important to be kind, but don't try to be the source of joy for everyone. If you can be the source of joy for you, that happiness that comes from within, that health will come from within, your connections will be more nourished. Versus, yeah, so it's if what can women do, Aditi, to really prioritize themselves without like, and or even if they feel the guilt, knowing how to navigate that guilt. Like no one way goes to bed saying, I've never taken care of myself and wakes up saying, screw everybody else, I am my biggest priority. The guilt, that voice, that conflict will always be there, but how can we add ourselves back on that priority list?
Yeah, that's so great. And again, there's no sort of one recipe for everyone. I think it's whatever resonates with you. I was thinking about this earlier also. I think some folks rely on their um, spiritual practice, which I think is great and sort of helps them navigate difficult situations or challenges or things that they're juggling. For me personally, I wake up early and I know that the first 45 minutes of my day are for me. And to me, that's very important. And this is true for vacation also.
Oh, I
So
love.
with my family, they know that I'll get up early. I'm happy to because I'm an early riser, but I know that the first 45 minutes are just for me. I may do something physical, um, just to get myself active and going. Um, I may do something slow to make sure that if I'm just sitting by a lake and staring, or maybe even journaling, me that's slow. So I think that, and then at least once a week, I mean, I do other things as well, but I think at least once a week, making sure that I prioritize time for me and that I have time to read a book that I'm reading, or I have time to just even go get a pedicure, or even join my friends friends in some sort of community engagement, be it coffee, be it a yoga practice, be it some sort of meditative practice. Um, but the sort of community piece is also very important for me. So I would say those things resonate with me, but I know that there are a number of practices that folks can lean on. And if you haven't done any of this, that's okay too. I would say pick one and try it. Pick something that you think might be interesting to you. For me, the key has been creating a routine that's consistent and predictable. So yeah, so I'd pause there.
And Ayurveda would say, "Oh, my beautiful Pitta. You love your routine because I thrive. That so resonates with me. Having that routine, being a creature of habit, what people think is boring is what sustains us. And actually, our system appreciates it too. Fewer surprises, happier nervous system.
Yeah,
But I think the one thing I want to say before we sign out for today is I also love what you didn't say, but sort of implied, which is even more beautiful, that self-awareness is key. Where there are days you might appreciate a slower morning by the lake journaling. Some other days it might be doing something more physical. So it's important for whoever is listening, just get to know yourself first. The
yeah,
only way you can really show up to life, responsibilities, relationships, and your team is when you know what drives you, what annoys you, what helps you thrive, and what really stifles you. And it doesn't have to be prescriptive. When you know, like what Aditi shared, her mornings, it's defined like this is her time. What that time looks like, it depends on what she needs. And the way she knows what she needs is because she is self aware. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough, and maybe we can talk about it next time, Aditi, is self-awareness in leadership. So, my friend,
I think follow-up conversation.
absolutely, this has been so incredible and so empowering. And, very often, Aditi, women struggle with relating to suggestions because it's completely unrelatable.
Yeah,
If you tell someone, wake up, go to a wellness retreat, it's not going to happen if you're juggling three generations. But if you
yeah.
can tell them, take out those 45 minutes, it's like, oh, that seems possible. So, meeting people where they are at is very, very important. And I think you conveyed that beautifully in this podcast. So, thank you for your time. It was so fun to have you on here. So, my friend, if you're listening to this and feeling seen, I want you to hear me when I say you're not failing, you're just carrying too much. And you deserve support, you deserve rest, you deserve dreams that don't have to wait until someday. If this episode resonated, share it with another woman who's quietly doing it all. Start a conversation, inspire her, let her know she's not alone either. And if you're ready to explore deeper ways to bring balance and resilience into your life, come find me on Instagram. I hang out at Shweta Vikram, or visit my website www.shwetavikram.com. Let's walk this path together. Until next time, breathe deeply, lead gently, and remember, you don't have to carry it all to be enough.
Beautifully said. Thank you.